Love can survive everything except being replaced while still living. The apartment on Maple Street had 2 windows that caught the morning light exactly right, turning the kitchen table into the only place warm enough to study before dawn. That's where we always sat. Him with his textbooks arranged in order of difficulty, me with coffee already made, his notes color-coded the way he could never quite manage himself. I can still hear the sound of pages turning, the click of my pen against the table's edge, the hum of the radiator that only worked when you kicked it twice. These were the sounds of building something. He had 3 bar exams ahead of him that year. I had already passed mine 2 years before when he was still finishing his master's degree in business administration, still figuring out whether law was what he wanted or simply what his father expected. By the time he really decided, I had already built my small practice, already learned how to read contracts in my sleep, already understood that the law was a language you either spoke fluently or not at all. So I taught him, every morning before work, every evening after. Weekends measured in case summaries and practice questions. I made flashcards. I broke down tort law into stories he could remember. I turned constitutional precedents into narratives with characters and stakes. And he learned. God, he learned quickly once he understood how. This isn't fiction. This is how love disappears, one shared ambition at a time. We met in law school, in the way people meet when they're too tired to perform and too desperate to pretend they have everything figured out. 3rd year, clinic rotation, both of us assigned to the same housing discrimination case that would take 8 months to settle and teach us more about patience than victory. He made me laugh during a deposition. I made him coffee when he couldn't keep his eyes open during a brief review. Somewhere between the endless research and the closing arguments, we became the people who made sense together. The wedding was small. His family, my mother, 14 friends who fit comfortably in a restaurant's back room. He wore a suit I helped him pick. I wore a dress I'd owned for years. The vows were traditional because neither of us trusted ourselves to write something that wouldn't sound rehearsed. Afterward, we went back to the apartment on Maple Street and fell asleep before 10, exhausted by our own happiness. Marriage felt like that for a while. Easy, unspectacular, reliable. We worked long hours at different firms. We cooked meals that were often just pasta and whatever vegetables hadn't gone bad. We fell asleep to true crime podcasts and woke to alarms that went off too early. He left notes on the counter, reminders, grocery lists, small jokes I'd find hours later and smile at without thinking. But he wanted more. He'd always wanted more, though he never said it with those words. He'd talk instead about impact and building something meaningful and legacy work. He'd mention names, senior partners at prestigious firms, entrepreneurs who'd transitioned from law into venture capital, colleagues who'd started their own practices and made it look effortless. I listened. I encouraged him. When he said he wanted to launch his own firm, specializing in corporate partnerships and mergers, I told him he could. When he worried about capital, about clients, about failing in a market already crowded with names bigger than his would ever be, I reminded him of everything he'd already survived. "You passed the bar," I said one night, my hand on his shoulder as he stared at a business plan he'd been revising for weeks. "You can do this too." He looked at me then the way he used to, grateful, uncertain, hopeful. "I can't do it without you." "You won't have to." I didn't know then that this would be the last night I believed in the future we were building. The crack appeared on a Thursday. He'd been working late more often, but that wasn't unusual. Starting a firm meant endless paperwork, networking events, client meetings that stretched past dinner. I understood. I was doing the same, managing my own growing caseload, taking on pro bono work that didn't pay, but mattered. But that Thursday, he came home at 11, and his shirt smelled different. Not perfume, nothing that obvious. Just different. Cleaner. Like it had been washed in someone else's detergent, hung to dry in someone else's air. I didn't say anything. I told myself I was imagining it. That exhaustion makes you paranoid. That love means trusting even when your instincts whisper otherwise. But I started noticing. The way he checked his phone now, tilting it just slightly away. The way he'd begun showering immediately after coming home when he used to collapse on the couch first, too tired to care about being clean. The way certain names appeared more frequently in his stories about work. Colleagues I'd never met. Client meetings I wasn't invited to anymore. Networking dinners where it didn't make sense for both of us to attend. One name appeared more than others. Simone. She'd gone to Harvard for business school, he said. She had connections in venture capital. She understood the financial side of corporate law in ways that complemented his strengths. They were thinking about partnering, structurally, legally, making the firm something bigger than either could manage alone. "You'll like her," he said one evening, not looking up from his laptop. "She's sharp, really sharp. I didn't ask to meet her." Something stopped me. Pride, maybe? Or the sense that asking would reveal a fear I wasn't ready to name. Instead, I watched. I began to see patterns in the receipts he'd leave on the counter. Dinners at places we'd always said we'd try someday. Coffee shops in neighborhoods he had no client meetings in. Parking charges near an address I didn't recognize but didn't investigate. The apartment started to feel larger. He'd come home later, leave earlier, spend weekends at the office, or what he called the office. I'd wake at 2 a.m. to find his side of the bed empty, his laptop glowing in the kitchen, his focus so complete he wouldn't hear me approach. "Can't sleep?" I asked once, standing in the doorway in my old college sweatshirt. He startled, closed a tab quickly, muscle memory, instinct. "Just reviewing contracts. Go back to bed." I did, but I didn't sleep. Time began to blur after that. Days folded into each other, each one feeling both identical and slightly wrong, like a song played half a step off key. I started looking for evidence without admitting I was looking. I'd check our shared calendar and find blocks of time marked meeting SM or site visit, partnership discussion. I'd see his phone light up with messages he'd read, but not answer in front of me. Then watch him step into another room, hear his voice go quiet and careful. I told myself this was normal. Building a business required discretion, partnerships were delicate, not everything needed to be shared. But then came the small things. Objects that testified to a life I wasn't part of. A woman's hair tie on the bathroom counter, thin and black and definitely not mine. He said it must have been left by the cleaning person, though we didn't have a cleaning person. A receipt for flowers I never received, purchased the day after we'd had our worst fight in years. An argument about time, about presence, about how marriage couldn't survive on good intentions alone. He said they were for a client. I didn't ask which one. A leather notebook I found in his briefcase when searching for stamps, filled with notes in his handwriting alongside someone else's. Smaller, neater, with hearts dotting the I's in a way that felt performatively feminine. Business notes, yes. Profit projections and client lists. But also inside jokes I didn't understand, restaurant recommendations, a small sketch of what looked like an office layout with 2 names on the door. His and hers. I put the notebook back. I didn't confront him. I simply started building a case the way I'd been trained to, gathering evidence, documenting inconsistencies, preparing for a confrontation I both needed and dreaded. The final piece came on a Tuesday evening in October. He said he had a late meeting. He'd be home around 10. I said fine, made myself dinner, sat with a glass of wine I didn't finish. At 9:30, my phone buzzed. A text from a former client, now a friend, asking if I'd like to join her for drinks downtown. I almost said no, but the apartment felt too quiet, too full of absence and suspicion. So I went. The bar was small, dimly lit, tucked into a neighborhood I rarely visited. I found my friend, ordered a drink, let conversation wash over me like static, and then I saw them. Through the window of the restaurant next door. At a corner table, leaning close, in that way people do when they're sharing more than a meal. Him, and a woman I'd never met but somehow recognized immediately. Dark hair, expensive coat, a laugh I could almost hear through the glass. Simone. They weren't touching, they didn't need to. The space between them hummed with intimacy I recognized because it used to belong to us. I finished my drink, made excuses, left before they could see me. At home, I sat in the dark and waited. He came home at midnight. "Sorry," he said, dropping his keys into the bowl by the door. The same bowl, the same sound, the same routine we'd performed 1,000 times. "Meeting ran late." "I saw you," I said. He froze. Didn't ask where or when, just froze. "At Marconi's. With Simone." Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. He didn't move toward me or away. "It's not what you think," he said finally. "I haven't told you what I think." He sat down at the kitchen table. Our table, the one where I'd taught him contract law at dawn. where we'd planned our wedding over takeout, where we'd built a life that now felt like evidence of something I'd misunderstood from the beginning. "We're partners," he said. "Business partners, I was going to tell you." "Tell me what?" He didn't answer immediately. I watched him choose his words, arrange them carefully, the way he'd learned to do in law school, deflecting, reframing, controlling the narrative. "Simone and I signed a partnership agreement 3 months ago." The room tilted. 3 months. "I wanted to wait until everything was finalized, until I could present it to you as something real, not just a plan." "Present it to me." I tasted the words, bitter and strange. "Like a gift. Like a future. Our future." He looked away. That's when I knew. Not from what he said, but from where he wouldn't let his eyes land. Not on me. Not on anything that reminded him who we used to be. "How long?" I asked. "It's complicated." "How long?" 6 months. Maybe 7. It's not something I planned." "You never plan anything," I said, and the words came out quiet, almost sad. "I plan. I organize. I make flashcards and wake up early and teach you everything I know. And you—" My voice broke. I steadied it. "You find someone else to build the thing we were supposed to build together." "That's not fair." "Which part?" He didn't answer. I stood up, walked to the counter where I'd placed my phone, my keys, my wallet, all the objects of leaving. "The partnership deed," I said. "Where is it?" "Why does it matter?" "Because I want to see what I wasn't worth being told about." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, opened an email, turned the screen toward me without a word. There it was. Official. Notarized. 2 names bound in legal language, promising shared profit, shared risk, shared decision-making. His signature, hers, a date from 3 months ago when he'd come home late and said he'd been filing incorporation papers. He hadn't lied about that. He just omitted who else's name was on the documents. "She has an office," I said, my voice strange and distant. "Doesn't she?" A pause. "Yes. That's where you've been going. Sometimes. And that's where you keep things. Your other life, the one I'm not part of." He closed his eyes. "I'm sorry." "For what? For the business or the affair?" "It's not an affair." "Then what is it?" He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I don't know." And there it was, the truth more devastating than any lie. He didn't know. He'd simply followed a path that felt easier, brighter, less burdened by history and obligation, and the woman who taught him how to pass the bar exam but couldn't teach him how to stay. I picked up my keys. "I'm going to her office." "Don't. Give me the address. Please. Give me the address, or I'll find it myself." He did. Wrote it on a piece of paper with the same pen I'd used to make his flashcards. His handwriting looked shaky, young, caught. I left without my coat. The building was 20 minutes away, modern, glass and steel, security desk that waved me through when I said I was meeting someone on the 4th floor. Their office, his and hers, was at the end of a hallway that smelled like new carpet and expensive ambition. The door was unlocked. Inside, 2 desks facing each other, a conference table, shelves still mostly empty. Her desk was neater than his. Organized files, a closed laptop, a framed photo I didn't look at too closely. I opened her drawer. The partnership deed was there, a physical copy, original, bound with a small ribbon like a diploma or a wedding certificate. I pulled it out, read it slowly, legally, with the same attention I'd once used to teach him how to read contracts, without missing the clauses that mattered. There were other papers beneath it, loan documents in both their names, lease agreements for office space, client contracts listing them as co-counsel, and beneath all that, personal things, cards with messages I didn't read, photos I glimpsed and looked away from. A hotel receipt dated 3 weeks ago from a conference I knew he'd attended because he'd told me he was going alone. He hadn't been alone. I left everything where I found it, closed the drawer, stood in the office that should have been ours and felt the full weight of what love becomes when it's asked to carry too much hope, too much work, too many versions of a future that only one person was still building. When I walked out, the security guard asked if I'd found who I was looking for. Yes, I said. I did. I didn't go home that night. I drove to my mother's house an hour away, the same house where I'd grown up, where my childhood bedroom still had posters on the walls and books I'd read before law school taught me how to argue with everything. She didn't ask questions, just made tea, sat beside me, let me cry the way you cry when you've been holding your breath too long and finally can exhale. He loved you, she said eventually. I know. Do you? I know he thought he did. I know he wanted to. I know he built a life with me because it made sense, because I made things easier, because I could teach him how to pass exams and cook dinner and pretend that was enough. Was it enough? I didn't answer. She touched my hand. You can't study your way through heartbreak, baby. The divorce took 6 months. We divided assets the way lawyers do, precisely, emotionally numb, translating years into line items and bank statements. He kept the apartment. I didn't want to wake up in that kitchen anymore, didn't want to see the table where we used to study, didn't want to remember what it felt like to believe in futures that could be built with flashcards and coffee, and love that turns out to be practice for something else. I moved into a smaller place across town. 1 bedroom. Good light, no memories. He didn't fight me on anything. Guilt, maybe, or exhaustion. He signed what needed signing, sent emails that were brief, professional, achingly polite. I hope you're well. Please let me know if you need anything else from the apartment. I'm sorry it ended this way. As if the way it ended wasn't a choice he made every morning he woke in someone else's bed, every document he signed without telling me, every future he planned with a woman whose drawer held the deed to a partnership I'd been excluded from while still being married. I didn't respond to most of his messages. There was nothing left to say that couldn't be handled by lawyers, by paperwork, by the slow bureaucracy of undoing a life. A year passed, then 2. I still practiced law, took on bigger cases, built a reputation for being meticulous and unsentimental in depositions. I still made coffee at dawn, I still color-coded notes. But now they were mine, my cases, my clients, my ambitions untethered from someone else's dreams. I heard about him sometimes through the small professional networks that connect lawyers whether they want to be connected or not. His firm was doing well. He and Simone had landed several major clients, made a name for themselves in corporate merger work, were frequently mentioned in industry newsletters. I was happy for him. Or I told myself I was. Or I felt the complicated thing you feel when someone you once loved succeeds at the plan you helped them build, just not with you. One evening, I ran into Simone at a legal conference. She recognized me immediately. Awkward, inevitable, the collision of past and present in a hotel ballroom full of people pretending to network. She approached carefully, like someone walking toward a dog they weren't sure wouldn't bite. I'm sorry, she said. No preamble, no excuse. For what? I asked, and meant it, not cruel, genuinely curious. She stopped, started again. For how it happened, for not speaking up when I should have, for being part of something that hurt you. Did you love him? I asked. She looked surprised by the question. I do. Yes. Then you don't need to apologize for that. But you need to apologize for the rest, I said, for the partnership deed signed in secret, for the drawer full of receipts and plans that should have been brought into the light, for letting him make me the person he left instead of the person he was honest with. She nodded slowly. You're right. I know. We stood there a moment longer, 2 women connected by the same man, the same betrayal, the same recognition that love without honesty is just elaborate pretending. He talks about you sometimes, she said quietly. Does he? He says you were the smartest person he's ever known, that you taught him everything important. Except how to stay, she didn't disagree. I walked away before the conversation could become something that hurt more than it already did. Years can pass inside a single evening. That's what I learned. That you can build a life in study sessions and shared ambitions and morning coffee, and it can disappear into someone else's drawer while you're still believing in it. That love doesn't announce its departure. It just starts arriving less often, staying shorter, leaving earlier, until one day you realize it's been gone for months and you've been pretending otherwise. I don't hate him anymore. I'm not sure I ever did. Hate requires energy I don't have left to give him. What I feel now is something quieter, understanding, maybe. Or just the exhausted clarity that comes from being forced to see a pattern you couldn't admit to while you were still inside it. He needed someone to teach him how to pass the bar. I did that. He needed someone to believe in his dreams until they became real. I did that too. And when he was finally ready to build the thing we'd always talked about building, when he was finally equipped with all the skills and knowledge and confidence I'd helped him develop, he built it with someone else. Not because she was better, not because I failed, but because by the time he was ready to create, he'd confused my support for obligation, my love for instruction, my presence for pressure to succeed in ways that proved I hadn't wasted my time. He never saw me as a partner. He saw me as a teacher. And when the exam was over, when he'd passed, when he no longer needed flashcards and early morning study sessions and someone to break down complicated concepts into digestible pieces, he graduated. I just didn't realize I was part of the curriculum he'd leave behind. I still make coffee at dawn. I still organize cases with color-coded notes. I still wake early and work late and build things carefully, precisely, with the same attention I once used to help someone else succeed. But now when I teach, when I mentor younger lawyers or help colleagues prepare for difficult trials, I'm careful about the cost. I'm careful about mistaking gratitude for love, progress for partnership, teaching for building something together. I know now that you can give someone everything and still not be chosen. That love isn't a test you can study for, that some people will always see you as the place they prepared, not the place they stayed. The partnership deed is still there, I imagine, in Simone's drawer. Or maybe they framed it, hung it in their office, celebrated it as the beginning of something they built together. I don't think about it much anymore. I don't check his firm's website or track their successes or wonder what would be different if the name on that deed had been mine. Instead, I think about the morning light in the kitchen on Maple Street. I think about how love can look so much like studying. All those hours of focused attention, all that preparation for a future you're sure is coming. I think about how easy it is to mistake helping someone reach their dreams for sharing them. And I think about the question I never asked, the one that might have changed everything or nothing. When you finally pass, when you finally succeed, when you finally become everything we worked for, will I still be in the room? The answer was no. It had always been no. But by the time I found the partnership deed in another woman's drawer, I already knew. I just hadn't been ready to believe it. Some truths you have to discover slowly, one receipt at a time, one late night at a time, one quietly signed document at a time. And by the time you're ready to name what's happening, it's already happened. The life you thought you were building is already built, just not with you inside it. I didn't lose him to another woman. I lost him to the version of himself I helped him become. The one who no longer needed a teacher, the one who was ready for a partner who hadn't seen him struggle, who didn't remember when he couldn't read a tort case without help, who didn't carry the weight of everything he used to be before he became everything he wanted. She got the easy part, the finished version, the confident attorney, the successful entrepreneur. I got the work, the doubt, the late nights and early mornings, and the slow, patient construction of a person who would eventually walk away. And maybe that's okay. Maybe some love exists to build something that will outlive it. Maybe my purpose was always to help him become someone, even if that someone needed to find a different person to be happy with. I tell myself this some days. Other days, I don't need to tell myself anything at all. Peace came quietly, disguised as acceptance. I don't wait for him anymore. I don't wait for explanations or closure, or the moment when everything finally makes sense. I just keep working, keep teaching, keep building, but this time, only things with my own name on them. The door is open, but I'm not going back.